You could double your income tomorrow and still feel like you're barely keeping your head above water. That might sound impossible, but millions of people prove it true every single year. They get raises, promotions, better jobs, and yet the pressure never seems to ease. The bills keep coming, the stress keeps building, and the finish line keeps moving further away. What's happening isn't bad luck or poor planning. There's a quiet economic force reshaping your financial reality faster than you can earn your way out of it. And understanding how it works is the difference between feeling trapped forever and finally breaking free. Let's start with something most people assume is helping them, but is actually doing the opposite. When you get more money, your brain doesn't treat it like a tool for building stability. It treats it like permission to upgrade your life. You move into a slightly nicer apartment. You lease a car that doesn't embarrass you in the parking lot. You start eating out more often because you finally can. None of these decisions feel reckless in the moment. They feel like you're finally catching up to where you should have been all along. But here's what's actually happening. Every single upgrade you make locks in a new baseline of spending, and that baseline doesn't go back down when life gets harder. You've just turned temporary income into permanent expenses. This phenomenon has a name in economics, but the label matters less than understanding the mechanics. When people earn more, their spending rises to match it, sometimes even exceeding it. The extra money doesn't accumulate. It evaporates into a lifestyle that now depends on that higher income to function. What makes this so dangerous is that it happens automatically. You don't sit down and decide to sabotage your future. You just make a series of small, reasonable-sounding choices that add up to a financial structure that's fragile and unsustainable. One unexpected expense, one job loss, one economic shift, and the whole thing collapses because you've been living right at the edge of your means the entire time. Now let's talk about the other side of this equation, the part that most people don't see coming until it's too late. While your income might grow over time, the cost of everything around you is growing faster. The price of housing, healthcare, education, and even basic necessities climbs year after year, and it doesn't climb at a steady, predictable rate. It accelerates. What cost you a certain amount 5 years ago now costs significantly more, and that gap keeps widening. Your salary might go up by 3 or 4% annually if you're lucky, but if the things you need to survive are increasing by 5, 6, or 7%, you're not actually getting ahead. You're falling behind in slow motion. This creates a psychological trap that's hard to escape. You look at your paycheck and see bigger numbers than you used to earn, so your brain tells you that you're doing better. But when you look at your bank account at the end of the month, there's less left over than there used to be. The math doesn't seem to add up, and that's because the purchasing power of your money is shrinking. A dollar today doesn't buy what a dollar bought 5 years ago, and it definitely doesn't buy what a dollar bought 10 or 20 years ago. You're running faster just to stay in the same place. And most people don't realize that's what's happening until they've spent years wondering why financial security still feels out of reach. Here's where it gets even more complicated. Society has built an entire system around making you feel like you're falling behind if you're not constantly upgrading. Advertising bombards you with messages that your current life isn't good enough. Social media fills your feed with people who seem to have it all figured out, living in beautiful homes, taking expensive vacations, wearing clothes you can't afford. The comparison game is relentless, and it rewires how you think about what you actually need versus what you think you need to feel successful. You start making financial decisions based on how things look rather than whether they make sense for your long-term stability, and that shift in priority is incredibly expensive. Let's bring this into focus with a real example. Imagine someone earning $40,000 a year who gets promoted and starts making $60,000. That's a 50% increase in income, which should be life-changing. But instead of saving or investing the extra $20,000, they move into an apartment that costs $500 more per month. They buy a car with a $300 monthly payment instead of driving the old one that still works. They start spending an extra $200 on dining out, entertainment, and subscription services they didn't have before. Within a year, that entire $20,000 raise has been absorbed into their lifestyle, and they're still living paycheck to paycheck, just at a higher income level. The worst part is they genuinely feel like they're being responsible because they're not making reckless purchases. They're just living a normal middle-class life. But normal has been redefined to mean barely sustainable. This is why the concept of lifestyle inflation is so destructive. It convinces you that you're moving forward when you're actually running in place. Every time you earn more and immediately spend more, you reset your financial baseline without building any cushion beneath you. And the real danger shows up when something goes wrong. If you lose your job, if you have a medical emergency, if the economy shifts and opportunities dry up, you don't have the flexibility to downgrade quickly enough. You've signed leases, taken out loans, committed to payments that assume your income stays constant or grows. The moment that assumption breaks, you're in crisis mode. And it feels like everything is falling apart when really, the foundation was never solid to begin with. Now let's address the other force working against you, the one that quietly erodes your money even when you're not spending it. Inflation is the silent thief that most people don't understand until they're much older and looking back at how much things used to cost. When the general price level of goods and services rises over time, the money you've saved loses value. If you put $10,000 under your mattress today and inflation runs at an average of 3% per year, that money will only have the purchasing power of about $7,000 in 10 years. You didn't spend a dime, but the value drained away because the cost of everything else went up around it. This is why keeping money in a basic savings account that earns almost no interest is a losing strategy. You think you're being safe, but you're actually guaranteeing that your wealth shrinks year after year. Most people treat saving as the finish line. They think that if they can just get a certain amount into their account, they'll be secure. But security isn't about hitting a number. It's about making sure that number retains its value and ideally grows faster than inflation eats away at it. That requires a different approach entirely. It means putting money into assets that have the potential to increase in value over time, whether that's stocks, real estate, or other investments that historically outpace inflation. The problem is that very few people are taught how to think this way. They're taught to save, not to build. And saving without a strategy to protect against inflation is like filling a bucket that has a slow leak. You're putting effort in, but you're not actually getting ahead. Here's the part that ties everything together. The reason your money never feels like enough isn't because you're failing. It's because the system is designed in a way that makes it incredibly difficult to get ahead unless you understand the rules. You're told to work hard, earn more, save what you can, and everything will be fine. But nobody explains that earning more often leads to spending more, that the cost of living is rising faster than wages, and that inflation is quietly stealing your purchasing power in the background. You're playing a game where the goalposts keep moving, and the only way to win is to stop chasing the goalposts and start building something that compounds in your favor over time. So what does that actually look like in practice? It starts with breaking the cycle of lifestyle inflation. When you get a raise or a bonus or any unexpected income, the first move is to act like it doesn't exist. Don't upgrade your life. Don't increase your spending. Take that extra money and put it somewhere that builds value instead of creating new obligations. Pay off debt that's charging you interest. Build an emergency fund that can cover 3 to 6 months of expenses so you're not living on the edge of disaster. Once you have that foundation, start putting money into investments that grow over time. You don't need to be an expert. You don't need to pick individual stocks or time the market. You just need to consistently put money into diversified assets that have historically increased in value and let time do the work. The second step is learning to separate wants from needs in a way that's honest and ruthless. You need shelter, food, transportation, and healthcare. Almost everything else is optional, and that's not a judgment. It's just a fact. The question you have to ask yourself is whether the optional things you're spending money on are worth delaying financial security. Is the new car worth pushing retirement back 5 years? Is the bigger apartment worth staying in debt longer? Is the vacation worth not having an emergency fund? These aren't easy questions, and the answers will be different for everyone. But if you never ask them, you'll keep making decisions by default instead of by design. The third step is protecting yourself against inflation by making your money work harder than it's currently working. If your savings are sitting in an account earning 0.5% interest while inflation is running at 3%, you're losing 2.5% of your purchasing power every year. That's a choice, not an inevitability. You can move that money into investments that have a reasonable chance of outpacing inflation over time. You can learn about tax-advantaged retirement accounts that let your money grow without being constantly taxed. You can educate yourself about how wealth is actually built, which is almost never through salary alone. It's through ownership, equity, and assets that appreciate. None of this is glamorous. None of it feels as satisfying as upgrading your life right now. But here's the reality. The people who feel like their money is never enough are usually the ones chasing short-term satisfaction at the expense of long-term stability. The people who eventually break free are the ones who learn to delay gratification, who understood that every dollar has a job, and who built systems that protect and grow their wealth instead of just spending it. It's not about deprivation. It's about priorities. It's about deciding that future security is more important than present comfort, and then making decisions that reflect that priority every single day. You're not stuck because you're not earning enough. You're stuck because the money you do earn is being pulled in too many directions, losing value too quickly, and disappearing into a lifestyle that doesn't build anything lasting. The solution isn't complicated, but it does require discipline. It requires saying no to things that feel normal but aren't actually helping you. It requires thinking in decades instead of months. And it requires accepting that financial freedom doesn't come from earning more. It comes from keeping more, protecting more, and growing more than the forces working against you can take away. If this video challenged the way you think about money, hit the like button and drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. Subscribe if you want more content that cuts through the noise and focuses on what actually works. The path to financial stability isn't hidden. It's just buried under a lot of bad advice and societal pressure to live a certain way. Now you know better. What you do with that knowledge is up to you.